Hello, and you are so welcome to Module 5 of our IncluMusic course. And this course was compiled by myself, Jessica Harris, Senior Music Therapist at the Royal Irish Academy of Music, my wonderful colleague, Kim Fallon-Bailey, Specialist Music Educator, and Elide Scarlatta, Senior Music Therapist at the Conservatorio di Musica Alessandro Scarlatti in Palermo. So you are so welcome. So for our first session, we're going to begin to look at a foundation for the topic, music and health. So this is session 1. So our learning outcomes here will be to receive a foundational understanding of the connection between music and health. So begin to see the strands and connecting networks between the areas of music and health. We're going to journey from the earliest origins of the music-health connection to the development of the modern practice of music therapy. We're going to encounter and learn a little bit about our founding practitioners and models of practice within the profession of music therapy. And we're going to begin to differentiate between therapeutic music experiences and music therapy. And this is something that we were going to continue within our initial 2 sessions. So within these first 2 sessions, we're going to continue this practice of differentiating between what are therapeutic music experiences and what is music therapy. We're going to begin to consider when is it best to refer to a music therapist, best practice to refer a student perhaps or a loved one to a music therapist. Again, this differentiation will be practiced throughout the module. And we're going to begin to develop some practices connected to music therapy, which you can develop and bring to your own learning and practice environments. Also, this was going to be continued throughout the module, building up a practical database as well. So before we begin, we want to introduce you to this beautiful piece of music. And we found the lyrics very resonant with us, and we thought it would be a beautiful way of bringing us into this topic and preparing us to consider the topic ahead. This is Music for a While by the King's Singers. So let's think about the strands of music and health, the strands of what connects our music and our health. So health musicking is a concept that embraces all aspects of how music experiences provide health affordances, also outside the therapy room. So affordances is a wonderful word. It just means those windows or those opportunities in which we can develop and achieve our health outcomes, the opportunities within music that provide health affordances. Sticker was the first to link music therapy and health musicking in 2002, and Rude in 2010 underlines the social aspect of health as participation and describes the potential of musicking as a provider of vitality, life, a tool for developing agency and empowerment, a resource or social capital in building social networks, a way of providing meaning and coherence in life. And that was from Rude in 2010. And all our references will be available within the course content. Just so you know, you can always look back and find any references referred to within our PowerPoint. So health musicking is not limited to a professional therapeutic context. It can be observed in any social or individual practice where people use music experiences to create meaning and coherence in states and times of adversity. So let's have a look at music education. And again, I'm going to use that fantastic word, affordances, the opportunities that we can find within music education. So music education prepares students to learn. So music education can enhance fine motor skills, our movement skills, including our grip and our hand movements. It can prepare the brain for achievement. It can foster superior working memory and cultivate better thinking skills. Music education has been found and is now absolutely known to facilitate student academic achievement and acknowledged to facilitate student academic achievement. So it improves recall and retention of verbal information. It advances math achievement, boosts reading and English language arts skills, and improves average SAT scores. And music education also develops the creative capacities for lifelong success. The music education in our early years can contribute to lifelong success across our lifespans, can sharpen our attentiveness, strengthen our perseverance, equip us to be creative, and support better study habits and self-esteem. Music therapy is a contrasting profession. So music therapy is a profession that has developed in various countries over the past century from a range of professional disciplines. The music therapy is contrasting but adjunct and parallel and conjoined with music educational practices. Its definition as both a profession and discipline varies according to the orientation and perspective of a particular group of practitioners or different cultures. So as a fusion of music and therapy, it is at the same time an art, a science, and an interpersonal process. And I love this because we see a converging in music therapy of so many various disciplines. We have the disciplines of art, the disciplines of science, and the disciplines of interpersonal process, and how they converge within the wonderful discipline of music therapy. So music therapy as an art is connected to subjectivity, creativity, and beauty. Music therapy as in science is related to objectivity, collectivity, reproducibility, and truthfulness. And music therapy as in interpersonal process is related to empathy, intimacy, communication, mutual influence, and role relation. So let's return to the earliest beginnings of the creation of the profession of music therapy, which began in ancient Greece, the home of many beginnings of our earliest foundations. So the early Greeks had many beliefs around the power and the impact of music and its role within health and healing. Damon, who was a 5th century BC teacher of Socrates and Pericles, said that music is powerful because it imitates the movements of the soul. That beautiful image of music reflecting and being a representation of our very souls. Music can suppress human passions and desires and influence and calm the manic part of our soul. So in ancient Greece, there was a belief about our manic aspects of our soul, and also parallel to that, the belief that music could calm this mania or this part of our soul. Music was jointly attributed to Apollo, who was the god of music, and Dionysus, who was the god of wine and ritual madness. And Dionysus was responsible for what the Greeks termed mania or frenzy, which, when channeled correctly, can be liberating or cathartic. So again, the ancient Greeks believed in achieving balance. In Platonic cosmology, mania was a sickness or a disharmonious movement of the soul, which is treated through restoring rhythm and harmony. So rhythm and harmony were at the foundation of our very mental health. Plato wrote, "Harmony, which has motions akin to the revolutions of the soul within us, was given by the Muses as an auxiliary to the inner revolutions of the soul, when it has lost its harmony, to assist in restoring it to order and concord with itself." So Pythagoras was a crucial figure within our development of our earliest music. Pythagoras, who many of us may know for his mathematics principles, and was actually also the founder of harmonic principles that we use so beautifully throughout the ages in our creation of music. Pythagoras experimented by plucking strings of different lengths. So he examined vibrations and the proportional relationships or ratios between notes. For example, an octave he found to have a ratio of 2:1. So to explain that a little bit further, an A above middle C vibrates at typically 440 hertz, while an A, the octave above, vibrates at 880 hertz. That's a ratio of 2:1. So he really looked at those wonderful intervals closely and created and gave them their relationships and their ratios between one note to another. Another example is that a perfect fifth has a ratio of 3:2, while a perfect fourth has a ratio of 4:3. Pythagoras held that the planets themselves emitted vibrations based on their orbit and distance from each other, and scientists have now even managed to be able to hear planets with new technology based on this premise. So there were further developments and thoughts around the very healing properties found in music and specific music that might generate these healing properties. So the flute playing in the Phrygian mode was seen in ancient Greece as the optimum sound and tonality for managing passion or mania and achieving catharsis. Aristotle believed that certain songs incited and awakened specific passions or emotions for susceptible people, and therefore could heal the soul and bring catharsis. Plato also asserted that certain types of melodies and sounds have a purgative effect in curing a specific ailment of the soul, and this is how diagnosis began to be related to melody. So interesting. The epodes were a type of a spell-like song, as mentioned in the Odyssey, when the sons of Autolycus cure Odysseus's wound. And these songs or spells were considered medical cures and believed to have cured heartbreak and dispelled demonic elements. And to highlight the importance of music in the ancient Greek traditions, in Arcadia, music education was required up to age 30, and the best musicians were considered national heroes. So really showing the importance of music within ancient Greece, the importance that they placed within society, within culture. The Greeks had made observations about the benefits of music, some of which we can confirm through continued research with new technology and scanning today. So what we have available today really confirms some of what the ancient Greeks found to be true all those years ago. So what were the earliest roots of the profession of music therapy that we know today within Europe? So let's continue on from ancient Greece and arrive at the Middle Ages, when medicine was influenced by the 4 cardinal humours, which were known as blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And hymns were considered an effective remedy against respiratory diseases. Boethius, who circa 480 and 525 was born in ancient Rome, developed a 3-faceted classification of music. He coined musica universalis, musica humana, or harmony of human body and spiritual harmony, and musica instrumentalis. In the Renaissance, we saw the beginning of the scientific approach, when music was prescribed as preventative medicine. And music was recognized as improving emotional health, and that was according to Zarlino and Vesalius, whose records we can find today. The first known paper that we have that contributed to music therapy writing was a treatise by Louis Roger in 1842. So we know that it was a treatise on the effects of music on the human body. We know that it was written first in Latin and then translated into French. We know that it was a discussion around the aesthetic elements of music that the human physiology responds to, how our bodies and minds respond to music, including a consideration of the anatomy of the ear and vibration of sound, which is so interesting, thinking about how we're processing the sound and how it enters our consciousness. And ultimately, music is most effective, which stirs passion in us. That's what Louis Roger found. Music which demonstrates and evokes the depth of feeling in us. In the 18th century, we know that there was an article in a Colombian magazine in 1789 whose authorship was unknown, but it was the first article to discuss principles relevant to today's practice, such as the importance of a trained practitioner. It mentions some aspects we might use today to define music therapy. So we have some suggested reading about the wonderful development of music therapy, and it is in a journal, an online journal called Voices, voices.no. And this particular article looks at the development of music therapy through its beginnings from the Second World War and post-traumatic, and its treatment of soldiers returning with post-traumatic stress syndrome. So it's really interesting and really a good chart for looking at the development of what we now term the modern profession of music therapy. So following World War II, as I've just mentioned, we had 130,000 soldiers. Now, this is according to US records, returning to the US with what was termed a neuropsychiatric condition. And 10 new hospitals arose within the state of Illinois alone, aiming to treat these neuropsychiatric conditions. Gilliland in 1944 issued an article about the healing power of music and as a challenge to educators, and this was in the Music Educators Journal. Gilliland was a prolific writer on this topic at the time, and she also wrote Music for the War Wounded, again in the Music Educators Journal. And these papers detail Gilliland's experiences with soldiers returning from the war, and they illustrate the early development of modern music therapy. And she also outlines her own initial definition around music therapy, which emphasizes the application of music as carefully watched and controlled. Calls for licensing of music therapy began around this time, including the recommendation from the American Music Educators Journal in 1945 that definite steps be taken towards the promotion of a program for licensing the persons who wish to teach or practice music therapy. And Duran K. Antrim published an article in the Musical Quarterly in 1944 advocating for research conducted by doctors and music therapists. So who were our initial pioneers of music therapy? We're going to begin by introducing Juliet Alvin, one of our most prolific founders of music therapy and well-known and well-recognized. So Juliet Alvin was a cellist born in Limoges in France, who was awarded the Premier Prix d'Excellence and studied under Pablo Casal, so a cellist of the highest proficiency. Alvin married William Robson and became a British citizen in 1929. She founded the Society of Therapy and Remedial Music in 1958, which would later become the British Society for Music Therapy. And she established Britain's first music therapy training program in Guildhall in 1967. She promoted music therapy worldwide, including on visits to Japan in 1967 and 1969, and published several seminal publications, including Music Therapy in 1966 and Music for the Autistic Child in 1978. She was a pioneer and a founding figure of music therapy worldwide. Alvin reports in her book the story of the famous singer Farinelli, from 1705 to 1782 as being among the first music therapists in history. And this is a beautiful anecdote that she shares with us in her book. Farinelli helped King Philip V of Spain to overcome a severe depression by singing expressive and empathetic melodies for him every night in an adjoining room that matched the king's mood. Farinelli therefore gave up his career and for 10 years until the king's death sang the same selected songs every night, including Haas's Pallido Sole and Per questo dolce amplesso. And we invite you to listen to this beautiful recording of this very piece sung by Andrea Scholl, which we have found for you. Please enjoy. So now, further founders were Noordoff and Robbins. They were two gentlemen. Paul Noordoff was an alumnus of the Juilliard Graduate School in New York, and Clive Robbins was a special education teacher. They had a wonderful new approach, which was centered in clinically improvised music. So interesting that they placed the creation of the music at the very center of their practice. They initially established projects at the Department of Child Psychiatry in Pennsylvania. And in 1974, under the sponsorship of the Music Therapy Charity of Great Britain, they established a preliminary training course for an international group of students. In 1975, they initiated a one-year graduate diploma course approved by the Department of Education and Science. And again, we have a wonderful clip which we invite you to watch from their practice in 1972, available on YouTube. The link is provided there. Enjoy. So why music? Why is music so fundamental? Why does music offer us these incredible affordances that we can't find elsewhere? So since ancient Greece, physicians, musicians, psychologists, philosophers, educators, and doctors have recognized the connection between music and health. And even though science now supports the physical effects related to playing and listening to music in our bodies and brains, there are still unknown factors in how music can lift us, move us, and connect us. And music therapists live in a scientific world amidst an often intangible modality. Throughout this course, we're going to examine more closely the profession of music therapy and what it may look like for a variety of populations. So we have some suggested reading. Now, we're going to suggest an interlibrary loan because we haven't found these freely available online, but we have checked with our librarian here within the Royal Irish Academy of Music, and they have so kindly suggested that interlibrary loans might be available. And so that's the pathway that we're going to suggest towards accessing these articles. And you can find the links within the PowerPoint and within our information in this module. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed our session 1 and we prepare for session 2.